So everyone, I'm Michelle Graham. I own Graham and Graham Elder Care Consultants. Have owned the company for 13 years and been in long-term care for 33 years. I've run assisted living communities and was a consultant for nursing homes, 17 nursing homes in Washington and Oregon, and a lot of different things. I'm also a paralegal, and I'm an elder care specialist in collaborative law, but I don't give legal advice. So I'm delighted to be able to introduce Liz Johnson, attorney, here in a minute. I guess I get to give a little bit of a spiel. So if you have any questions regarding anything surrounding long-term care or short-term rehab, you can give us a call. We are no cost to you because we're compensated by the senior care providers. And if we don't know the answer, we'll know where to find it. And what we love to do is we're like a buyer's agent in real estate. We help families figure out what their options are for care based on their unique needs, how you're going to pay for it, and all those good things. And then we actually help you locate the right options and save you a lot of stress. My favorite part of the call is the sigh at the end when somebody realizes that they've been totally stressed and now they get to get some help and some meaningful kind of help. So love what we do every day, very blessed. So with that said, I get to introduce Elizabeth Ann Johnson. She goes by Liz. She's an attorney here in Washington State, and her practice area is on guardianship, Medicaid applications and appeals if you've been denied, probate, and estate planning. And what I love about Liz is that she was first a paralegal for 15 years. She started as a courier in a law office, courier in a law firm, and she was mentored by somebody, a attorney, and she became first a legal secretary, then a paralegal, and then eventually an attorney. And she also has a master's degree in psychology, which I think would be a wonderful benefit as she's working with people, and most of these cases are so stressful. So the kind of thing that I work with, a company like ours works with Liz, is we refer people to her if they haven't gotten powers of attorney. And I'm sure she'll talk about that a little bit, because that can be a real problem. And then you have to go into guardianship. Or when I'm talking to someone that maybe has limited funds and they know they're eventually going to need to convert to Medicaid, or it's a couple, and I really think that they need some counsel on how to protect assets for the one person in the marriage that's well when the other one needs care. And so we work together quite often in those ways. So I think I kind of saved this for last. This is the thing that kind of blows my mind about Liz. When you talk to her, you'll see she's very quick-witted. She has a delightful sense of humor, but she has 6 children and she looks like she's 14. So how can that be? And so I think you'll enjoy hearing from her very much. And again, it's Michelle with Graham and Graham, and I'm delighted to introduce you and always here to help you in any way I can. Take it away, Liz.
Well, first of all, thank you, Michelle. That was a very nice introduction. I'm also a big fan of Michelle's. If you ever need to talk to somebody about placement and you just want someone who really understands, who is compassionate and kind and knowledgeable, she's been doing it since 1991. Placement consultants is not always an easy field. It comes and it goes. So you really have to develop a solid reputation with the community. And I love that when I need to talk to Michelle, I can talk to her. I'm not put off or having to wait weeks and weeks to get into contact with someone. So I love the personable service. So I'm so glad you introduced me today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So as Michelle said, my name is Liz Ann Johnson. I have my own firm, Liz Ann Johnson Elder Law. I am based in Washington. Most of my business is around Pierce County, Faircrest, University Place, Tacoma. My clients are generally seniors, but any adults I do planning for. I also will go to hospice, homes, hospital settings, because the nature of this business is that people can't always come to me. So I do my best to meet my clients where they are and to have their needs met. So I do have a physical office, and then I work from several locations to get the services to the people. I think Michelle said it best. The best part of every interaction with a client is the sigh of relief at the end, getting them the help they need to achieve their goals, whatever it would be. So because I am an attorney, we're going to start off with an agreement that if you listen to my talk, you understand that I'm providing education only. I can't give you legal advice about your specific situation. It's probably the number one question I get asked, even if I'm standing in line at Starbucks and it comes up, what do you do? Oh, I'm a lawyer. And they're like, do I need a will? I'm like, I can recommend the whip, but I'm not so sure if you need a will until we talk. I need to know things like, what are your specific situations? Do you have children? Do you have disabled children? Are you disabled? Are you likely to go on Medicaid? There's an intake process for a reason. So you agree if we continue, you're not going to make your own documents based on what I'm telling you today. And that really the advice I would give you is to meet with someone who can help you sort out your particular situation. So as long as we all agree there, I can move forward with probably the first question I ask everybody who is calling me. Their first question is usually, can you do a will? And then I ask, do you currently have an estate plan? Surprisingly, a lot of people tell me no, and that's just not true for everyone. You may think you don't have an estate plan, but Washington has one for you if you're a resident here and something happens here. So you either have your own estate plan that you created, or you get Washington's default plan. So they will decide, who's going to provide coverage for you, who's going to help you when you need help. A lot of people think also that an estate plan is just a will or just a power of attorney, but an estate plan covers everything you have and sort of who you are and what you want to have happen next. So things like a will or a trust, they let you decide who are you going to give your items to. Are you going to go to court and have that involvement, or are you going to have things pass outside of the court system? It lets you decide who's going to provide care for you if you can't provide it for yourself. It's going to, if you have charitable goals, it's going to let you make those decisions. It allows you to help take care of any surviving spouses, disabled children. It helps protect your assets. And other reasons people do estate planning is to minimize taxes and other financial reasons, which is a bigger talk than we're going to have today. So estate planning is really taking care of the whole package. What happens if physically you can't care for yourself while you're alive? What happens if mentally you're no longer able to care for yourself while you're alive? And then what happens when you pass away? So planning for help while you're alive. If you don't, again, Washington has your back. A judge can decide who will manage your assets. You may find yourself in a situation like a conservatorship. You will pay everyone's fees related to that, and there will be periodic court hearings and accountings, which will also be paid for with your assets. If you need help with medical and care decisions, again, a judge can step in and appoint someone to act on your behalf. You'll still have to pay for it, and there will be periodic hearings and countings. So when you use a properly executed power of attorney, you can help avoid this conservatorship or guardianship. Or if you can, in your power of attorney, you can nominate who you want to help you or to make those decisions. So when you opt out of Washington's estate plan and create your own, you're just giving yourself more choice in what's going to happen and how much oversight may be necessary. There's also your plan for passing, which is another aspect of estate planning. You're going to decide who gets your assets. Some concerns are, if you leave it to a kid, they would get it 18 outright, or someone may manage it who you wouldn't necessarily pick. Your spouse could remarry and inadvertently cut out your children or someone you meant to leave your assets to. If you had minor children, a judge would decide who's going to raise them. and then who has control of your money or your children's money, and probate court, depending on the size of your estate or what mechanics you've used to transfer your assets, will be decided under the laws of the state of Washington, regardless of what your wishes might be. So then you just decide, you have your Washington estate plan. Do you want to pick your own estate plan and make your own decisions with regard to what's going to happen while you're alive and when you pass? People do visit me and they have concerns about estate planning. A lot of people believe, regardless of age, that if they do the estate planning, they will die. If a will take too long because I'm going to ask them a lot of questions, or they're not old enough, they don't have enough money, they don't need a will or power of attorney, or any kind of estate plan. And anyone over the age of 18 who wants to decide what happens with their stuff, whether they're alive or deceased, should engage in estate planning. The good news is I've never had a client pass away immediately after signing their estate plan. I do see people on hospice and at the end of their life, that existed before we drafted their documents. So to the best of my knowledge, and I actually Googled it, I looked for like obscure ways that estate planning killed people, like paper cuts that got infected. I did not find any. So based on my Google research, I do not believe estate planning has killed anyone yet. So it's probably better to just do it. It helps your loved ones make sure you're protected. The benefits of estate planning are not tied to wealth, social status, any of the things that people object to. If you want control of your assets and your life, it's better to have your estate planning done. I did work with a family. They had a daughter who was 40 years old. She was single, never married, no children, and she got into a car accident. She was in a coma. It was temporary, but they were going to have to go to court and get a temporary conservatorship to pay her finances because she had a mortgage. She was a pretty successful person. They couldn't talk to her employer or access her bank accounts to pay her bills. She was an all electronic person because her dad's like, well, I'll just write a check and pay him, but no bills came to the house. They just showed up in her inbox and no one had access to it. So even if you're perfectly healthy, there may come a time where you might need some estate planning documents, even temporarily. So another thing is estate planning isn't necessarily just about you and your wishes. It's very comforting to your loved ones and it helps them make decisions. It can help reduce conflict if people know what you want to do. I think a lot of families are really, really lovely. And then someone is sick or incapacitated or dies, and everyone is sort of grieving and having an emotional response to that and maybe not quite themselves. I've been in meetings with families who attended the estate planning with their parents. Everyone got along, everyone sort of understood what to do. And then when we were afterwards, when the parent passed, a fight broke out in my office, and Barbies that got broken when they were 6 got brought up. All sorts of emotional stuff started to come out in the middle of it. And it was nice that we had the documents to fall back on. But yeah, some heartaches came up, and, you know, mom paid for your glamour shots when you were 18 and I want to be compensated for that. So strange things can happen when families are grieving, which is why it's nice if everything's just written out. And sometimes it's just easier to follow the plan. So it can be a real gift to those who are left behind. Really, you want to, when you should start is as soon as you turn 18, or if you have a child, anytime you do a major thing like start investments or buy a house or any real property, get married, get separated, have a long-term live-in partner. If you're going to go on long-term care or need hospitalization, it might be the kind of thing where you want to set a reminder every year to just review your estate planning. It really starts with figuring out your goals. Most of the time clients call me and tell me what they want to have. And then my question is, what do you think that will do for you? Or what are you trying to accomplish? Because I've been asked to prepare documents that are opposite of what they're trying to achieve. So it's really helpful to meet with an attorney who's going to go over your specific situation and who's going to figure out what you're trying to accomplish. Sometimes people are trying to accomplish avoiding probate, but they also don't want to do like a trust or do any of the work while they're alive to manage it. Sometimes they decide, probate's not that expensive. I let my kids sort it out when we get there. I don't want to have to manage a trust while I'm alive. I don't want to have to go and make all of my accounts pay on death to any particular person. So we really talk about, what do you want to do? How much do you want to spend? And how much effort do you want to put into it now and over the years? So it's really important to think about what you need to have happen, not what you think you need for documents. If you avoid things like power of attorney and nominating someone to help you, you may be looking at something like a permanent guardianship or conservatorship. It does require someone to be appointed. It could be a certified professional guardian. It could be a family member. It may not necessarily be the person that you would pick, or it may cause a fight among various family members who either want the responsibility, or my favorite is the ones who don't want the responsibility, but definitely want to criticize what you're doing. So, and I think caregivers experience that a lot, especially family caregivers. You guys are there every day taking care of your parents, and not all families, some families, a sibling will show up once a year and just, let you know everything that you're doing wrong. They're not going to pitch in and help or stay or take a shift, but they're happy to provide you with a quality review of your oftentimes free services. So it's the same situation. You just want to make sure that you're picking what you have going on and that you have the person making those decisions that you want to. Not really a funny story, but when we were doing some estate planning, they were trying to figure out which children were going to be in charge of which things. And the mom had a lot of cats. The number doesn't matter, just a lot of cats. And the one daughter was like, well, they're all going to the pound if something happens to you. And the other daughter's like, no, I'll take care of them. And so she was like, well, okay, you will be managing that part of my estate because I don't want my cats to go to the pound. So it's important you can love your children equally and you can lean into their different strengths, whether it's financial, medical, decision-making, or the one that most aligns and will honor your values. Again, really, it can help you avoid fighting among family members. The court will then eventually have to sort things out if you don't have the right stuff in place. So it makes things easier. It always makes me sad during a guardianship or a conservatorship or a probate when the families start to fall apart and people won't talk to each other anymore because of decisions that were made. At least if you've written out your decisions, it's not any particular person making it. It's like, hey, this is what mom or dad or my brother wanted. It's not, Scott's always been the favorite and he always gets to make the decisions. I just want to make this decision. And so it really helps to make sure that your wishes are being honored, or to give them a backup plan. If, they can all agree on a decision, great. But if not, this would be the default decision. So your solution is to indicate in your documents who will help and when. Powers of attorney can be general. They can activate upon disability. They can activate upon a particular occurrence. They can activate right away. They can be limited to certain things. So this is where it's important to sit down with an elder law attorney or an estate planning attorney and figure out, what do you need this document to do for you? I have had people bring me documents that they got off on the internet. I don't mind internet documents. What was challenging is that they didn't understand what they did. And so when I read through it with them, I was like, oh yeah, so they can open bank accounts for you. They can change your beneficiaries. They can sell your real property. And they were like, whoa, I don't want them to have all of that. I just want them to help me, maybe pay some bills. And so it's important to really understand what level of authority you're giving people, and then to offer them some guidance about how you would want that managed. You want to talk about things like, what will happen with your, if you have minor children or disabled children, you want to help make plans for those events. If you're married, and you get separated, you want to maybe make sure that your estate plan documents are not going to benefit someone you don't want to benefit. And you should nominate backups. Everyone has their number one preference usually, but it's a good idea to select some other people. We never know what's going to happen. And if that person is available, I like to remind people, you can't, it's not a sentence or an order. You can nominate someone and they can always decline. And you never know. I have otherwise very responsible, helpful people that said, yes, hey, if something happens, I will step in and help you. And then they got something like cancer and they just couldn't come and be power of attorney, or one of their kids was sick or one of their parents was sick. And so they couldn't do it, or their job was too encompassing. So in maintaining that ability to continue to have a choice, you want to nominate backups in case your first choice doesn't work out. When we're talking about assets, often I find that some people don't know what their assets are. They think, oh, it's my bank account. But it's really everything you have. Retirement accounts, house, real property, intellectual property, brokerage accounts, cars, boats, motorcycles. I met with a family during a probate process. They had done up a will, and the parents had, or the mother, because she was the only survivor at that point, the mother had made a lot of accounts pay on death, which messed up what she intended to do in the will. And so if they had met with an estate planning attorney, or at least someone like me, I always tell people, like, okay, this is what your will is going to do. Let's talk about how these other accounts are titled and what's going to happen with them. And I let them know, you may need to change the pay on death beneficiary, you may need to update the accounts, or you may need to switch things around so that what you're trying to do, again, a will doesn't necessarily fix things if you are jointly on a bank account with somebody, or if you are joint on a house with someone, depending on if you're a joint tenant with rights of survivorship, or if you are tenants in common. So if you don't understand how all of your assets are held, preparing a document may not achieve your goal, which is distributing all of your assets the way that you want to distribute them. And title is important. You want to make sure that you know who is on your account. I have a lot of people who will add a joint person to their account just to make things easier. The thought process they give me is, oh, well, I don't need a power of attorney. I don't need to spend that kind of money. I'll just put one of my kids on my account, and then they can access it and do everything they need to. And that's great. And I think it probably does work for a lot of people. The caveat to being an attorney is people don't call me to just say, hey, things are going great and I don't need your services. Everything worked out. All of my estate planning was perfect. I don't hear all of the good stories. People come to me when things probably didn't go well, or when they want to prevent things from not going the way they want. So I have had people joined on accounts. There was a mother and a daughter who were joined on a checking account, and the mother started to lose some capacity and had overdrawn the account. Well, the daughter banked at the same account, and because of the account agreement, which says all of your accounts that you have here, we can offset. When the mother was overdrawn, they took money out of the daughter's separate account because they were in the same financial institution. They were joint, so they were both responsible for the overdrawn account. There's also been situations where the other joint owner who doesn't really own the money, like maybe the kid, it's the mom's money, but the kid is joint on there, where the kid got sued or got into a car accident, and it's a joint asset. So it's possible that if there's a lawsuit and money owed, they could come after that account, even though the kid never put any money in it and it was really just the mom's. So there are reasons to be cautious about adding people to your account. You really want to meet with someone and consider, is a power of attorney the right choice, or would a joint account be a better option, or Would a pay on death account be a better option? So those are really specific things that you have to sit down and do a global view of what is happening with your life. There are some benefits, of course, with a jointly held asset. It immediately passes. When the other person does, they would either have to do something with the account to distribute it or add another joint person to it to avoid the probate process. It probably, depending on how you want to distribute your estate, a lot of married couples are joint on accounts. And that can be a great thing for when people are married. But if you're not intending to share your assets or leave all of your separate assets to your spouse, then you may want to consider some different options. Beneficiary designations, again, great vehicle to avoid probate. The banks just do it for you, so you don't have to pay anyone. But it goes to the named beneficiary if they're over the age of 18 and alive. If you have an 18-year-old who maybe needs a little bit more, or even a 40-year-old who maybe needs a little bit more guidance, you may not want the funds to go to them outright. You also want to make sure what happens if that beneficiary isn't alive. What is the backup plan for that? So you can make sure, again, that your estate plan goes according to your wishes. I have met with clients and not had to prepare any documents for them because we were able to sit down and figure out alternative estate planning methods. So, you have some options. A lot of estate planning that doesn't go well is because the documents are poorly drafted. It doesn't avoid probate. It's not updated when it needs to be. Children are born or people end up on disabilities or long-term care. You just want to make sure that things are the way that you need them to be. And again, the horror stories, because that's when people come and see me, is when it doesn't work out or when they're preventing it. But someone drafted their own will. They did not consult an estate planning professional. And when they drafted their will, they had about $400,000. And they wanted to leave a small gift to a nephew who I think they took him every summer. And so he was just like, they just want to give him a little something. So they left him $10,000 and they wrote that in, $10,000 to this nephew. And then the rest of the estate was going to go to the two kids equally. So a $10,000 gift, and the other two kids would get roughly almost $200,000 each. But the dad got sick, ended up having to private pay for a lot of care. They had Medicaid spend down. And then what was left after everything, and then when the mother passed away, was about $6,000. And that went to the nephew, and the two kids, there was nothing left to leave them. And that is not, I think, what the parents intended when they did the documents, but they drafted them themselves. They didn't update them when things changed. And originally, the nephew was like, no, you guys can have it. It's fine. But then a fight broke out, and that was the end of it. And he kept the $6,000. So, it's just something to think about in considering that if you don't want to accidentally leave your entire estate to somebody else. Another family member added they wanted to skip their child, so they drafted their own documents and they left stuff to the grandchild, but they didn't really disinherit the other child. The grandchild died. They didn't make a backup in the will. So under the laws of intestacy, it went to the child that they didn't want to receive it. So depending on how complex or what your needs are for estate planning or powers of attorney, you want to make sure that you consult with someone so you can get your stuff and your wishes where you need them to be. So there are a variety of documents that you can get when you're estate planning. There's wills, there's power of attorney, there's transfer on death deeds, there's community property agreements, healthcare directives. They're all great tools. In figuring out which one you might need, you probably just have to meet with an estate planning attorney or become really well versed in what the different things do for you. The benefits of having this stuff in process is that it streamlines the needs that you might have, whether they're while you're alive, medical or financial. You're going to choose your people. Hopefully it will reduce fighting. It may not reduce fighting if people's feelings are hurt, but it will reduce fighting over what's going to happen next with you or your estate. You direct your assets, you make your own choices, and it gives you and your family a little bit of peace of mind. A lot of people ask me, why should I meet with an attorney if I can go online and get it? You're not meeting with an attorney to prepare a will. You're meeting with them to make sure that your estate planning goal, which is all of those documents and what you want to have happen at the end, are met. So you can prepare them on your own. If you are well versed in this area and you know that you can get it done, that's great. I would never listen to the advice of someone who a lot of times people will come to me and they'll say, oh, my cousin from Minnesota, not Washington, said that I've got to get whatever document it is, or I have to make sure that it's only effective in this very particular limited way because they had a bad experience, or they're in a state where the attorney and the PR get a percentage of the state rather than what they actually work on. That's not true in Washington. So you just want to be careful about listening to other people who've had bad experiences. Your situation is going to be uniquely your own, and you want to make sure that what you need to have happen happens. So you are welcome to call me if you have questions after this. I will stay around for the Q&A. Hopefully I covered most of your questions and you have an idea of what you may or may not need.
Thank you so much, Liz. We appreciate having you. It's so important to get these legal things lined up beforehand. If we have any questions, folks, if you want to put them in the chat or the Q&A. I'm not seeing any. So we will move on. So unfortunately, our next, you're supposed to have Kelly Chambers from Visiting Angels talk about, I think, hold on just a minute, guys. My internet froze up again. Okay, hopefully my internet will hold out for the rest of this. So Kelly Chambers from Visiting Angels couldn't join us today, but she was going to introduce Tina Etchison from Defensive Driving School. And I think we all can agree that driving is something that affects all of us, whether we drive or not. If we are out and about in any way, the drivers around us impact us, hopefully not literally. So we have Tina Etchison, who's going to present on senior driving.
All right, thank you. I will do my best to kind of bust into this. Sorry, I'm figuring out how to share my screen. I do know how to do this. I teach on Zoom often. There we go. Awesome. There we go. So first off, I'm going to start off by apologizing. I work with teenagers a lot. If I get overly animated or try and make a game out of things, just go with it. Participate in the chat. It's what I'm used to. It's just a little bit, sorry, I just lost what I was doing. There we go. It's just a little bit easier on me if I get to interact a little bit. Yeah, so we've all been impacted by senior drivers. I've been impacted by this in my life. My parents are currently both in their 70s. They don't think I know what I'm talking about, and this is what I do for a living. So it's very exciting to be here. No, we are not talking about driving lessons for seniors because that would be fun, but it's not a thing. We're talking about how do we help loved ones and people in our lives understand, like people we're providing care for, understand that it's time to stop driving. And how do we help them do that with dignity and with the respect that they have earned without taking away their car keys and just like hiding their car? Because that seems to be a solid tactic for a lot of family members. They're just like, well, I just took Uncle Bob's car away. It's fine. He won't miss it. Well, eventually Uncle Bob does miss it. Then he calls me and says, I want to learn to drive again. And it's a whole big thing. So it's better to kind of be upfront about this, but it's harder to listen to your own family members. So who am I? I work for Defensive Driving School. I'm the operations manager for the school, but I am also a certified driving instructor and a licensed DOL examiner, which gives me a little bit of a different background. So a doctor can very likely suggest to a patient, it's time to stop driving due to dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, stroke, any number of injuries or illnesses. However, they can't often give the guidelines as to why that person is dangerous. And that is something that I have completed some extra training in order to do. And then I've now completed upwards of 100 of these evaluations. The only other quality I have, because I went to school to study English literature, which makes me a fascinating conversationalist over a nice dinner. But the only other skill I have is I'm a little bit fearless, which also helps with teaching teenagers how to drive and with telling senior citizens bad news, because sometimes they really like me and sometimes they really don't like me. It just kind of depends on the day. So why do we care? So we are the only school in Washington State currently that offers a comprehensive evaluation to senior citizens. I'm working on branching this into Snohomish County. We are in King and Pierce County. Currently, I'm spearheading the whole thing. I'm training other instructors to have the qualifications to do this. But we care because the owners have been impacted by this. I have been affected by this. Seniors are living a lot longer than they used to. And in order to maintain their independence, they are not wanting to give up their driver's license. They're not wanting to give up what they view as their right to drive a vehicle. And I get that. I do. It's a hard thing to give up. However, they're not safe. And as we age, different things happen to us that make us more and more unsafe. Currently, the state of Washington does not have any rules in place stating somebody must retest for their license at a certain age. At 85, the DOL, if somebody at the DOL says, I think there's a problem here, they can ask somebody to retest, and you have to pass the eye exam, but there's nothing to force you to. And to give you an example of how this works, my grandfather at 90, his license was expiring. He went into the Department of Licensing. He had early onset, or he had early stage dementia, but enough of an issue that he was having issues. He did not pass the eye exam because he couldn't follow the instructions. He had already totaled 3 vehicles in at-fault accidents, and he walked out of there with a renewed driver's license with no restrictions or stipulations on it. So this is a very essential thing that we are doing. There needs to be a better system in place to ensure the safety of senior citizens, but also to ensure the safety of everybody else. I'm sure we've all been driving on the road and had an issue where a senior was driving 20 or 30 miles below the speed limit or struggling in heavy traffic. And it's heartbreaking because you don't want to be the bad guy, but somebody needs to step in and give the news that nobody wants to give. There are risks to seniors driving longer than it is safe for them to drive. How I phrase it to seniors and their families is, how would you feel if you caused accident or death to another person, if you caused injury to yourself? They all say, I would feel horrible if it were my fault, but they're not in a mindset typically by this point to recognize that they are the issue. So there are some risks. So the first risk is physical safety. Most seniors, if they get into an accident that results in injury, their quality of life diminishes. They end up usually with mobility issues, long-term health issues that they didn't have prior, that impacts their quality of life. There's also an emotional and mental hit that they take to their health. If they cause the injury or death of another person, they will never recover from that. Those feelings will stick with them and cause depression. And the third way is financial security. even if a driver only has mild symptoms of Alzheimer's or dementia or stroke or I had somebody once with neuropathy. It was charted that he couldn't feel his legs and feet. If they're cleared by their doctors, but cause a crash, they can be held liable for for any damages caused. For a senior driver, this translates into losing their retirement income. This translates into losing the accumulated wealth that they have. This was actually how we got my grandfather to stop driving. He had protected his assets to take care of himself and my grandmother in their old age. And we let him know if he caused another accident, we would turn him into the police ourselves, and he would end up having to pay. So he finally did stop driving. There are some warning signs that can be looked out for. Now, these are not all inclusive. There's some variations to this, but as families, as caregivers, as people trying to provide services, ask yourself some of these questions. Ask your family members these questions. Are there dents and scratches on their vehicle, but nobody knows how they got there? I did one of these recently where we discovered that the driver, while also having dementia, also had lost her depth perception and her vision, which was resulting in her scraping the passenger side of her car on garbage cans, posts, signs, benches, other vehicles, things like that. When your family members or your patients are in a group setting or at a family dinner, do they have a hard time following the conversation? Do they stay really quiet where they used to engage more? Are they starting to show more confusion and frustration and not being able to track what's going on around them? Is there a change in pattern into their driving behavior? Did they used to love to go out for a ride or love to go to the store or the beach, and they haven't gone anywhere in a year or two? There's something inside of them typically that's telling them it's not safe, it's not comfortable, and so they start to avoid it. When you ask about their driving, do they get defensive? Do they insist that the traffic laws are unfair, that the signs don't make sense, that it's somebody else's fault? Somebody who is still aware and making sound decisions will look at a situation a little more objectively and wonder if they are at fault. Can they remember dates and timelines? I had somebody who was convinced they retired 20 years ago. And when I asked what year that was, she said 1980. And I said, that would have made you 35. Oh no, I retired in 1990. Well, she retired in I think 2006 or something like that. Like, but are they confused by dates and times? Do they remember chains of events? Do they remember the names of their kids and grandchildren? I had a gentleman tell me the 6 names of his grandchildren, and when I went to verify it, he had gotten none of them correct. But in his interview, he was convinced that those were the names. Are your family members still doing the things they love to do? Are they still getting out and about in their communities? Are they still enjoying time with friends and their church groups and their social circles as they've always been a part of? Or are they starting to withdraw more? Are they starting to maybe go to bed even earlier because watching TV seems like it's a lot of work and they can't follow the stories? Do they still like to read? Or have they stopped reading things that are longer than a page because it's too confusing? When they drive, are they jumpy? Do they seem to make erratic decisions? Do they struggle to check blind spots? Do they struggle to change lanes while maintaining speed? These are all little signs, and there's a few more. There's a slowdown in the processing of new information and being able to follow multi-step instructions. So there's some things that you can look for that will clue you in that it's maybe time to have an evaluation done or have a serious talk about retiring from driving. I will say that say I do 10 of these, 9 people should be done driving, and 8 of those people already know that before I talk to them. They just want a professional to tell them what's going on. Okay, and then what is the evaluation? So I'd love to tell you that it's a really exciting, complex process. It really isn't. There are multiple steps and components that tell a story, and when combined, they usually tell me everything I need to know, because I have yet to meet anybody who walks in and says, you know what, Tina, I think I'm a dangerous driver. Why don't you go ahead and tell me not to drive? I can't take anybody's driver's license away, although they wish I could. And so most of my job is giving tough information and helping them make a decision to stay safe. I start out with just an interview. I want to get to know people. I want to find out where they're at currently, where they've been in the past, their career, what their life is like, what their daily routine is like, how restricted is their routine, what is their sense of adventure like. And then I ask questions based on what they tell me to see if all of their information lines up correctly, and in the same order, or if things start to change, like the gentleman's grandchildren. Then we talk a little bit about medical history, not I'm not a doctor, I can't make a diagnosis, but I want to know how often we're going to see a physician, what medical issues we've had, what medications we're on. And I want to see if they are managing their medical care, if they're managing their medicines, if they're managing their households and their budgets, or if they have help. That's going to tell me some things, and what their attitudes are like, if they're trying to hide things or if they're very forthcoming. I've had people be very direct and forthcoming, knowing what the answer would be at the end. Then I've had people not tell me things. And then when I ask them about it later and I say, it seems like you have dementia, they go, oh yeah, I was diagnosed 3 years ago with dementia. How forthcoming are they? And then we move into just some screenings and assessments. Again, not a doctor, can't diagnose anything, but I can tell you if there are, some red flags in your vision, whether that's with your depth perception or your ability to read street signs. And I'm also looking to see how you're following the directions I give you and if you get frustrated by my directions. We do some general knowledge questions about driving. We do a couple of memory tests, a couple of hand-eye coordination. If you pass those, I will take you in a car that is my company vehicle that has a brake on my side, because I had somebody almost take us through a building and now I don't go in anybody's car by them, without my brake. At the end of it all, I give them a review and I give them very detailed feedback. Each component, with the exception of the interview, is scoreable. It's not based on my opinion. This is what it is. This is where the deficiencies are. What do you think is causing this? And we go through everything piece by piece and have a discussion. And I give them, the best news I can. And sometimes that best news is you're fine, keep driving. Sometimes it's you're getting to a place where you could be dangerous soon. Let's put some restrictions on your driving. And sometimes it's you need to never drive again. All of these can be hard conversations. If a family member has concerns, but their person passes this, that's a hard conversation. But it's all very, very necessary. And I think it's my hope that I can get the word out there enough that this becomes a thing, and that hopefully eventually it will start becoming a requirement. Because like I said at the beginning, people are living well past when it's actually safe to drive, and living independently well past when it's probably safe for them to drive due to various issues. So yeah, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. So help me help you guys. Help me find the people that need this evaluation, but also let me help these families by being the person to give this news and to lead this conversation so that their family member doesn't have to. Like I said at the beginning, my own parents don't listen to me about this topic, which is super awesome. But you can reach me at Defensive Driving School, Tina at driving-school.com. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to give phone calls. Yeah, it's a topic I care very deeply about, and I just want to keep everybody safe. That's it. That's my whole spiel. I think I got us back on time, so go me. And yeah, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you,
I
Tina.
don't see any. Awesome. Thank you.
I thought I heard somebody say something, unless it was my echo, but if anybody has any questions for Tina, now's the time.
I don't see any. All right, I'll stick around here for a few minutes. I
Okay.
do have to log out at 1. I have to get to another location to help with an emergency. So,
Oh, gosh. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll, I'm going to do a little closing talk, but then if anybody wants to hang around for any questions, some of us will be able to hang around and try to answer any of your questions.
And Amy, I will do some things in Thurston County that would require a travel charge, and that's something that I set up on a client case by case basis.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Answer hospice. All right. Well, thank you so much to all of our presenters. So much valuable information that was shared with us today across a wide spread of topics. We all know that being a caregiver can be very difficult. And I just hope that everybody leaves here today knowing that there are resources out there. There are people that want to help and make it as easy for our caregivers as possible. So if anybody does have any Q&A questions, now's the time. You can raise your hand. You can put it in the Q&A or in the chat. Don't be shy. I guess another thank you to all of our sponsors in the Pierce County Area Plan Survey. The link to that is in our chat, as well as the link to the Healthcare Providers Council All-Star Caregiver Award nomination forms. And if you're interested in connecting with any of our presenters and you weren't able to get their contact info during their presentation, it will be our webpage in the Thank you all so much.